emotions. So I'm going to show you actually what bacon and eggs looks like. We actually figured we can map anything, and we can map using mobile devices, or we can map computer devices. We actually heat map it. So the way the heat map works is the higher the percentage of the sample that's sort of agreeing that they felt that emotion towards whatever the stimulus is, whether it be a food product or an ad or a brand, we actually sort of heat it up like this. So as I said, it kind of fires on all the core. That's why we eat bacon and eggs. If it didn't, we wouldn't really eat it. And then actually kinds of pull over here into our more familiar territory. Okay, so obviously we want to tie this back to mobile, being a mobile conference. And what I'm about to show you is interesting, and it's relevant to all of us because it was a need expressed by Irene Rosenfeld, who's the CEO of Kraft Foods. And believe it or not, she actually got her start in marketing research at Kraft Foods Canada. And as part of our big national convention a few years ago, she came and keynoted it, and I had the great opportunity to actually interview her while she was up. And she expressed a need and an ask. And so her ask was, we as Kraft, we want to get into the homes of consumers and start to understand our customers almost like their family. And her need that she asked research companies to develop was, you folks, you've got to develop new tools for us to go and understand what's going on with people, and please enable them to create content, insight content, in the same way that she, because that's their core consumer, is actually creating social media content. So how can we get huge whacks of data out there that we can mine to understand how to create brand growth across all our portfolio of products? And of course, social media is a very good example of that. We developed something a little bit different, and I'll show you that now. So our basic platform that we made, and we partnered with a few companies on this, we actually call it EAT, but it's applicable to any sort of category. But the basic idea is enable large numbers of people to use cell phones to capture eating occasions in this example. And we've been hearing a lot about this throughout this conference, about using cell phones to actually capture data. The difference you're going to see here is we did this on a quantitative basis. And so how it basically works is with our large panel of people, we actually have them take pictures, come in, log in, and then tell us about all the different meal occasions they would have had over sort of a 1-week period. We want them to sort of tell us about all the meals that they ate. And then we actually have them tag them the same way they would in Facebook. And so the big learning for us here was we can offload a lot of the data analysis and coding to the respondent. So these are just drop-down lists where they're telling us what brand they ate, what the amount was, what type of utensils they actually used to actually have the whole meal experience. And so across a large number of meals, you get a very interesting quantitative data set that actually can be combined with pictures to understand some interesting things. So as you can see, you get all these great pictures. And as part of our pilot that we ran, we actually got 6,200 different breakfast occasions. So it then goes from where it's qualitative to definitive quantitative. It becomes quite powerful. It becomes powerful because you can understand actual food pairings on a quantitative basis. You can see these are actually, where cereal is concerned, you can see people over the age of 65 are actually combining their meals with a lot of things, which was an interesting insight, of course. Younger people actually don't do much at all. And then, of course, you can actually see photographic evidence of how people are actually doing that. Actually see how they're eating as well, too. So, again, you can see here it's a piece of brie, interesting opportunity for a cheese company to make that a more user-friendly experience with single-serve brie. But then because it's because of the tagging, they're actually telling us everything that's in this omelet. So we know about the 12 ingredients that actually went into this very delicious-looking omelet. And we actually know there's actually Parmesan cheese on this bagel as well, too, because we actually get people to code it. And then we get into the why, which is really the emotional side. And so these are the drivers for breakfast satisfaction as based on our emotional measurement methodology. As you can see, as I was saying before, you can see a lot of the drivers are kind of in the nurturing and in the familiar space, but a few opportunities to sort of cross the meridian and go into the more interesting side. So this would be cereal. You can see one part of cereal's challenge is as you're in this space, you can kind of come up and be boring. Boring is actually the most powerful emotion we've measured. Nothing correlates more highly with purchase intent and loyalty than boring. It's to be avoided at all costs. So as a cereal company, you've got a big challenge where how do you be cereal, which is inherently sort of familiar, but also pulls into boring a little bit. And the way you do it is actually to do things on the other side of the map to be sort of, make people feel turned on and excited. There's a toast bagel or sandwich. Again, a little bit of boring. Here we go with yogurt. Interestingly, it actually causes people to feel self-confident. Interesting implications for their positioning and their packaging, that yogurt as part of a breakfast will actually lead to a more self-confident day that you can go out on. Here's an egg breakfast without meat, and here's an egg breakfast with meat. So you can see what happens is you actually lose some of the alive, and you then start hitting on this very interesting, delicate emotion called guilty pleasure, or sort of chocolate, and things we know we shouldn't really be doing are, but yet they feel so good that we do them. They can taste quite good, as we all know, but it does lead to guilty pleasure. And then fruit. So as you can see, fruit really dials up sort of our alive emotion. So just to wrap up about, how does this actually work? Does this make sense? We've got a chain of breakfast restaurants in Canada that's growing incredibly rapidly. It's the fastest growing breakfast franchise chain in all of Canada. It's basically just another greasy spoon. It's the same kind of thing. It's got all the same things on the menu, except it doesn't, because they figured this out here, that fruit makes people feel alive. So for the low cost of a little bit of extra fruit, they create these interesting breakfast dishes where it's kind of more exotic. Here's a better example where it's kiwis, and they put bananas in toothpicks so it stands up. And so just adding that little bit extra fruit causes people to go. There's lineups like out the door and around the corner at these places on on Saturdays and Sundays, and they charge about 30% more for the breakfast. And I bet you they don't even know why they're doing so well, but they've just sort of stumbled into the idea that fruit has actually caused people to feel alive, and because when you get into that emotional state that actually drives behavior, we know from our research that it does drive behavior, you get these fantastic results. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to email me. I've got heat maps from a lot of different brands. We've probably looked at over 400 or 500 different brands. If there's one you're particularly interested in, just send me a note, and I'd be happy to give it to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Shane.
Thanks, sir.
All right, questions on all you P&G PR folks. I'm sure there's some questions in the audience from you.
P&G PR folks?
The P&G PR folks, product research, yes. And, oh, no, they're saying they're going to talk to you later. That's what they're all saying.
Okay.
Right? No, any other questions? This is the first, the second session we've gotten into, well, actually the third session we've gotten into emotion at a fairly deep level. So, and we've had a couple different approaches around all of that. Yes, Rolf.
Shane, I have a question. How would you compare what you're doing in terms of emotional measurement versus, say, automated processes like what Affectiva is doing? How do you see the pros and cons of trying to automate this in terms of automatically analyzing facial expressions versus getting people to expressly describe it?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. I mean, emotion is very complicated. As I said, it's sort of when you're experiencing an emotion, it's something that's it's a chemical reaction happening within your body. The 96 that we measure, you kind of got to ask someone right now to actually tell you what they're actually feeling. Because we've looked at all the other stuff, and we have a relationship with the neuroscience lab, and we've tried all that technology. We're very excited about the ability to automate that. The thing we're most excited about is actually real-time neurotransmitter measurement, which is obviously a very intrusive methodology, and don't know how many respondents would sign up to be having blood samples taken while they're being exposed to a concept. But all this sort of biometric stuff is coming. We don't really see any of it working particularly well just yet.
Sure. I'm curious how this meshes with some of the research we've seen from Brain Juicer on so-called hot states, and if this data might change based on if individuals were in some of those so-called hot states.
So I'm not familiar with Brain Juicer's hot states. Is there anybody from Brain Juicer here that can explain what a hot state is?
AJ? Well, you know what? In interest of time, let's have that conversation.
After. We can meet after coffee with the Brain Juicer people. It'll be very productive.
I was just curious, when you had consumers looking at these words that describe the emotions, doesn't that kind of move them into a rational space? Are they evaluating and analyzing and drawing distinctions between emotions, and how you account for that in terms of getting to the real emotion as opposed to what their self-auditing is of what those emotions are?
I mean, it's a very good question. So the idea was, we did a lot of R&D on this, almost over 800,000 interviews to figure out, how to present response with the right kind of question set. And the way we do it, I should have showed you an example actually, is we sort of start with sort of macro emotions, and they sort of slide a bar around. So if it was interested in bored, so you've seen a concept, you're either interested or bored. You know if you're interested or bored in a concept. And if we sense that you're interested, then we get more specific. Are you fascinated? Are you amazed? Are you thrilled? And what we found is consumers are very good at actually saying, you know what, I actually am amazed. But again, we've you know, it was 100 different ways we tried this before we found the right mix that actually was A, easy enough for response to do, and B, extremely predictive of their future behavior that we did through a few longitudinal studies. But that was our, you know, through our R&D, you hit the nail on the head, that was our biggest challenge, was to make sure we were doing that in the right way.
I want to point out, too, as this topic has come up more and more about emotional measurement, and kind of like the social media conversation, there's 50 different ways, 50 recipes to bake this cake. I think the vote is out on what's the best as of today. We're learning as we go forward. But the understanding that it's an important piece of the puzzle is something that I think we all agree on, regardless of whether it's you know, hot states or neuromarketing or, you know, text analytics, whatever the case may be. So that's important. All right, big round of applause for Shane. Thank you.
Thanks.